He had lost more than just his arm. He had lost the purpose that defined him. Technology offered a second chance, but could cold steel ever replace the warmth of his creativity? Every step toward his new reality was fraught with pain, doubt, and fear. Yet his decision to transform himself changed everything. The story of how he turned despair into triumph will leave you breathless. Before we get into this amazing story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. At Second Life Stories, we bring you inspiring tales of courage, hope, and how technology is changing lives for the better. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss the incredible journeys we have lined up. 17-year-old Thomas had always found refuge in painting. With every brushstroke, he poured his emotions onto the canvas, creating vivid stories that spoke louder than words. His talent didn't just set him apart, it defined him. But one fateful afternoon changed everything. A routine bike ride ended in a catastrophic accident, leaving him unconscious and his right arm, the hand he had relied on to create his masterpieces, irreparably damaged. When he awoke in the hospital, the weight of his new reality hit him harder than the fall. The world around him felt dull and lifeless, as if the colors he once wielded had drained from existence. He avoided the easel in his room, unable to face the reminder of what he'd lost. Every blank canvas was a mockery of his helplessness. His family rallied around him, their concern etched into every word and gesture. His younger sister, Emma, refused to let him wallow. "Your art isn't in your hand," she insisted one evening, placing a small sketchbook in front of him. "It's in you. Find another way." Her words lingered in the air, but they couldn't pierce the thick shell of frustration and despair that enveloped him. To Thomas, her optimism felt misplaced. He wasn't an artist without his arm. He was a shadow of who he used to be. Days turned into weeks, each one blending into the next as he grappled with his loss. Frustration became his constant companion, gnawing at him with every failed attempt to adapt. The thought of never creating again consumed him, leaving little room for hope. One gray afternoon, desperate to escape the suffocating confines of his thoughts, Thomas wandered into an art exhibition. The vibrant displays of color and creativity stung like salt in an open wound, reminding him of the life he could no longer have. Yet amidst the crowd, something caught his eye. In one corner of the gallery stood a robotic arm, painting with a precision and grace that seemed almost human. Its movements were fluid, its brushstrokes deliberate. Thomas couldn't look away, his emotions a chaotic mix of fascination and envy. Noticing his intense gaze, an older man with a warm yet confident demeanor approached him. "Impressive, isn't it?" the man said. Thomas nodded, unable to find the words. "I'm Dr. Lang," the man continued, extending a hand. "I design advanced prosthetics, like the one you see here, and I believe I can help you paint again. Would you let me try?" For the first time in weeks, Thomas felt something stir within him, a faint flicker of hope. Skeptical yet clinging to the faintest hope, Thomas agreed to Dr. Lang's proposal. The robotic arm, sleek and futuristic, seemed almost otherworldly as Lang unveiled it. Its polished metallic joints and intricate wiring were a marvel of engineering, yet they intimidated Thomas. As Lang carefully fitted the prosthetic, Thomas stared at it, unsure if this machine could ever feel like a part of him. The words, "This will never feel like me," echoed in his mind, even as Lang reassured him, "It's not about replacing what you've lost. It's about rediscovering what you can create." The installation process was meticulous, requiring precision and patience. Sensors were attached to his muscles, sending signals to the robotic arm, but the connection felt foreign, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong slot. Moving the arm for the first time was an awkward struggle. Every twitch of his fingers demanded an immense mental effort, and the movements felt jerky, unnatural. Then came the training. Lang introduced exercises to help Thomas adapt, but the results were anything but encouraging. His first attempt to hold a brush ended in frustration. The arm twitched uncontrollably, smearing paint across the canvas. His second attempt was no better, producing shaky, disconnected lines. Each failure chipped away at his resolve. One evening, after another unsuccessful session, Thomas erupted in anger. He slammed the prosthetic down onto the table, yelling, "I'm not an artist anymore! I'm just a machine's puppet!" The weight of his words hung heavy in the room, and Lang, standing quietly nearby, chose not to respond. Despite Thomas's despair, support from those around him became his anchor. Emma remained his steadfast cheerleader, reminding him that setbacks were just part of the journey. "You're stronger than you think, Thomas," she said one evening, her voice unwavering. Then there was Max, a fellow patient Thomas met during a therapy session. Max, who had lost an arm years ago, used his robotic prosthetic to play guitar. His confidence was infectious. "It's not about what you've lost," Max told Thomas as they sat together one afternoon. "It's about what you do with what you've gained." At first, Thomas dismissed those words as empty optimism, but over time, they began to take root. Watching Max skillfully strum his guitar with mechanical fingers inspired Thomas. Slowly, he started approaching the prosthetic arm, not as a replacement, but as a new tool, one he needed to understand and master. His progress was painstaking, but the first small victories, like holding the brush steady or creating a clean stroke, rekindled a flicker of hope. While his doubts lingered, something deep within him began to shift. Perhaps the path forward wasn't about reclaiming the past, but embracing what was possible. Even as Thomas began to improve, the weight of self-doubt never fully left him. Every new day brought a unique set of challenges, some technical, others deeply emotional. While his progress with the prosthetic was undeniable, the nagging voice in his mind constantly questioned his worth as an artist. Was he truly creating, or was he merely a passenger, carried by the machine? One afternoon, determined to prove himself, Thomas set out to paint a landscape he had envisioned for weeks. He carefully prepared the canvas, mixed the paints, and adjusted his grip on the brush. The first strokes were tentative but promising. As he worked, confidence started to build, his movements becoming smoother, the image on the canvas coming to life. But then, without warning, the prosthetic arm froze mid-stroke. The brush dragged across the canvas, leaving an erratic, jagged line through the nearly completed painting. Thomas stared in disbelief at the ruined work. The frustration boiled over, and he ripped the prosthetic off, throwing it onto the table. "This isn't art," he shouted, his voice shaking with anger and despair. "It's just a machine pretending to be me." Dr. Lang, who had been observing from the corner of the room, remained calm. He stepped forward and picked up the prosthetic, placing it gently back on the table. "Thomas," he said, his voice steady but firm, "a prosthetic is just a tool. It's no different from a brush or a palette. Real art doesn't come from your hand. It comes from within you." Thomas looked at him, still fuming, but something in Lang's words struck a chord. Could it be true? Was he letting his own insecurities hold him back more than the prosthetic ever could? That night, those words played over and over in his mind. The next morning, Thomas returned to the studio with a new determination. He stopped seeing the prosthetic as an obstacle and began treating it as an extension of himself. Each movement, each brushstroke became an act of focus and patience. Weeks passed, filled with relentless practice. Slowly, his confidence grew as he learned to control the arm with precision, pushing past his failures. Then, one day, everything clicked. Standing before the canvas, he painted with a clarity and intensity he hadn't felt in months. By the time he finished, the result was a self-portrait. It was raw and unfiltered, capturing the pain, resilience, and transformation he had experienced. The textures were richer, the shades more complex than anything he had created before. In that moment, Thomas understood a profound truth. His creativity had never been tied to his physical body. It had always come from within, his mind, his emotions, his soul. And now, with the prosthetic as his tool, he could channel it in ways he never imagined possible. When Thomas put the finishing touches on his self-portrait, he stepped back and took a long, deliberate look. The painting was more than just an image. It was a raw expression of his pain, his struggle, and his transformation. The portrait wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. It embodied everything he had endured and overcome. For the first time since the accident, he felt ready to share his art with the world. He entered a local youth art exhibition, submitting the piece with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The thought of strangers judging his work, judging him, was terrifying. But there was a spark inside him, a determination to show that his journey had meaning. On the day of the exhibition, as he walked into the gallery, his heart raced. His self-portrait was displayed prominently, its bold colors and stark contrasts capturing attention even from afar. The painting depicted a man caught between two worlds, one side organic, the other mechanical. The divide was jagged, almost violent, yet the two halves blended seamlessly in the center. It was a powerful visual metaphor for the conflict and unity Thomas had come to understand in himself. As the gallery filled, people began to gather around his piece. He watched from a distance as whispers turned to discussions, and discussions to visible emotion. Some viewers lingered for minutes, their faces reflecting awe and even tears. One moment stood out among the rest. A woman, accompanied by a guide, approached the painting. She leaned closer, listening intently as her companion described the image. After a few minutes, she turned and asked for the artist. When Thomas stepped forward, her words struck him deeply. "I lost my sight years ago, but your work, it makes me feel colors again. I can sense the pain and beauty in every stroke. Thank you for reminding me what art can do." Her gratitude overwhelmed him. In that moment, Thomas realized the true weight of what he had accomplished. This wasn't just about proving he could paint again. It was about reaching others through his art, showing them that creativity transcends physical limitations. The exhibition became a turning point for Thomas. People approached him throughout the event, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. His journey became an inspiration, a living testament to the harmony between human spirit and technological advancement. For Thomas, this was just the beginning. He had found his voice again, not just as an artist, but as a beacon of hope for those fighting their own battles. His world, once blank and empty, was now filled with color, emotion, and endless potential. If this story inspired you, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. What kind of transformation story would you like to see next? We can't wait to see you in the next video.